What's going on, guys? Robbie with the Bodybuilding Anchor. Fouad Abiad was born on October 15th, 1978, in Windsor, Ontario. He grew up in a religious household. His parents wanted him and his siblings to keep the Lebanese heritage, so they only spoke Arabic in the house, with his father never actually learning to speak English, so they had no choice but to only speak their native language to him. Fouad was a skinny kid throughout his high school. He eventually started to get into football, which prompted him to add size very rapidly, getting up to a chunky 220 pounds. But in the year 2000, Fouad's life would change forever. He attended his first ever bodybuilding show, the Toronto Pro. He was in awe of the size and condition of the pros that immediately made him fall in love with the sport, and little did he know that this would change his life forever. Fouad began to take his training much more serious after that, and after 6 years of hard work and dedication, he finally won his pro card at the Canadian National Championships in 2006. That same year, Fouad competed in his first pro show at the Atlantic City Pro, where he placed 15th. Over the next 11 years, Fouad would go on to compete in 20-plus pro shows, with notable placements in 2009, second place at the Tampa Pro, 2013, second at the Toronto Pro, 2014, second at the Europa Super Show, 2015, getting his first ever IFBB Pro win at the Europa Games in Orlando, and in 2015, he also placed first at the Vancouver Pro, having 2 first place in that year. And his last pro show was at the 2017 Arnold Classic, where he placed in 6th. Fouad did plan to compete in the 2020 at the Chicago Pro, but had to pull out due to health concerns, and in turn would officially announce his retirement from the sport.
I won't be competing in Chicago in 2 weeks. My health has to come first. What you guys don't know is all throughout this prep, I've been getting blood work done because I did have some health issues in the latter part of 2019. They seem to have crept back up, and doctors are advising me to kind of pull the plugs. The saddest thing for me is that I probably won't compete again. And
So as you can see from that video, Fouad clearly has a deep love and passion for the sport of bodybuilding, and it was extremely hard for him to announce that he was retiring. So let's rewind back a bit now. 2019 is when Fouad started to branch out from being only a bodybuilder to becoming a business owner and podcaster. On April 23rd, 2019, Fouad released his very first podcast called the Real Bodybuilding Podcast. On this first episode, he went in depth about how bodybuilders make money. The first 4 episodes would just be Fouad by himself, covering various topics. The 4th episode is when he would bring on his first ever guest to the podcast, Ron Partlow, aka Big Ron. And from here on, this podcast will grow into what it is today, in-depth bodybuilding conversations with some of the best in the business. Fouad is incredibly knowledgeable about the sport and all aspects of it, as well as having a natural ability to interview people with ease. Fouad has even said he doesn't prepare or write notes before going into an interview. He just lets the conversation flow naturally. Very impressive, in my opinion. Real Bodybuilding Podcast isn't the only podcast that Fouad has released. His second podcast, called Bodybuilding and Bullocks, was released on July 8th, 2019, only a few months after his first one, only getting its name on episode 2. They originally wanted to call it Bullshit in Bodybuilding, but Nick Trigilli had already dubbed that name, so they had to change it. This podcast, starting out, was just Fouad and Luke Sandow for the first year, making 31 episodes together. This podcast style was more relaxed, covering bodybuilding news, personal stories, and various news headlines. This is where Fouad's personality began to shine, showing how real and charismatic he is with a great sense of humor and also fantastic storytelling. He was able to combine bodybuilding and humor to build a loyal audience extremely quickly, and it was very apparent that this type of podcast in the bodybuilding world had never been done before. The way he did it made it possible for new fans of bodybuilding to listen and also relate to what they were talking about, unlike a lot of the other bodybuilding podcasts where they just go in depth to various subjects that you need prior knowledge to about the sport to understand what they're talking about. This was optimal for growth. After a year of just Fouad and Luke, he began bringing more guests on, which were just friends who were also successful bodybuilders. Notable first-time appearances were Episode 34, James Hollingshead, Episode 36, Ben Chow, Episode 39, Guy Cisternino, Episode 43, Ian Valliere, all of which are still regulars on the show who each bring a very dynamic stance to the podcast. Their personalities, all which seem to be very different, but they somehow are able to mesh and make it work extremely well. The Bodybuilding and Bullocks podcast was supposed to just be popular British bodybuilders to discuss bodybuilding, life, and other topics. So after non-British guys started making regular appearances, Fouad rebranded it into a third podcast series, what we all know and love today, Bro Chat. The first Bro Chat labeled episode was released on October 22nd, 2020. Many reoccurring guests are still in the show, who I mentioned earlier, and some have come and gone for various reasons. And Fouad has also had some controversial business disagreements with former guests on the show who have now never returned and probably never will. And everybody knows who I'm talking about right now, which is Nick Walker. Nick was on Bro Chat for many months, being a fan favorite. And as we know, Nick used to be sponsored by Hostile. But last year, leading up to Olympia, Nick and Fouad had a falling out where Nick was released from Hostile. But that's just the life of being a business owner. You just have to make the hard decisions sometimes. Bro Chat is the most popular series Fouad does. The fans have developed a love for their mixed personalities and incredibly outrageous topics they dive into, and also their little mini feuds they get into. Most notably, Guy Cisternino's little mini freakouts, which we all love, and how they always continue to pick on him. If you haven't listened to this podcast, it is a must. You will get a first-hand look into the personalities of some of the best bodybuilders in the world, who are fully transparent about their opinions and personalities. So in summary, Fouad started podcasting initially to promote his bodybuilding and supplement line, Hostile. But doing so, he became the most known bodybuilding podcaster of his time. He has without a doubt single-handedly promoted the sport and brought in many new fans. His unique way to show the world that bodybuilders are just normal people on the inside has inspired a generation of young bodybuilders, and he will continue to do so for many years to come. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this one. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. I would really appreciate the support. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.